Hello again, everybody. This is Derek, aka Mr. Everything, and I am coming back at you with our next Harn video. In today's video, we're going to talk about Harn's Pantheon, right? Not just religion, but we're going to talk about the mythos and the creation of Harn and the world and the different gods. I'm making a number of summary videos that touch on the subjects like character creation and combat and in this one in religion, but I'm also going to talk about magic and the kingdoms and things like that. But we're going to talk about those at a high level, and then maybe in a future video I'll get very specific and detailed and maybe talk about each individual god, in their own video or something like that. But right now we're basically just talking about the entire thing as a whole. Now remember that Harn is in year 720. That's when they have decided to select to focus all their content, all their product is focused on the year 720. And they're equating the year 720 in the world as being sometime during maybe the 12th century on Earth. So you have like a feudal medieval universe, a feudal medieval world. Uh, but this world is large enough that you could have any Earth culture. So if you wanted to have a Japanese style samurai campaign, you can, because they have areas like that in this world. If you wanted to do like a dark sun, desert fantasy uh, kind of a game, you can do that because they have an area like that in this world. But Arn specifically is an area in the world that is an island continent, um, in approximately the same location as England, right? So you're going to have the same type of weather and things like that that you might encounter in England. Okay, so the first thing you want to know is Kethria. Kethria, right here, is the world in which Harn is located on. Kethria is more than just a world. I would call it more like a dimension, right? If you've got other planets, the sun, the moon, all that stuff, that falls within the Kethria world. Uh, and in and the way they describe it is that every dimension has adjacent dimensions, and you will have connections between these other dimensions that certain types of planeswalkers or people that travel through different dimensions would be able to get to easier or harder than others, right? And in their world, Kethria has a direct connection to this place called Yashane. Yashane, or Iashane, or yeah, I guess it's Yashane. I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce it. Is the afterlife, or the no, think of it like Valhalla, right? That's where uh, there are demon princes that live in Yashane, and well, the kingdoms are controlled by the gods, and then the barons are run by their demons, uh, and it's possible that if you worship your God and your piety is high enough, when you pass to the afterlife, you go to Yashane, and continue your battles with uh, with your deities, armies, or all the faithful, right? So um, that's kind of a after the afterlife. Um, okay, so let me see what else we got. We got the Librum. Okay, so some 600 years ago, remember the year of 720. So this is when the world was new. Well, that's not true. That's the common reckoning, or and it starts at zero. But there was things that happened before that, right? Because you have the Earth bearers, and you had the elder races. There was a lot of things happening before year zero. Okay. Um, okay, so I'm not going to go like line by line through um, these books that I've got pulled up, but I want to say that there was creation, right? There were, and I kind of look at it a little bit like the Greek mythology, um, where you have the primordials before the gods, right? And that's kind of what um, Harn uh, Celestia had what they call the first gods, uh, right? The first gods, and yeah, and rather than being traditional or conventional gods, they were beings of primordial power, the principles of power. So it it's vague on purpose. It allows you as a referee to kind of shoehorn whatever pantheon you want to put in there. But think of it like earth, wind, fire, you know, time. I don't know what else you might be able to, space or the void, however you want to put in there. Those were the beings that stood up against just chaos, right? Not chaos being a entity, but chaos being a situation. So they were in the middle of chaos, and these beings came together, and uh, they formed their own. Um, they formed their own. We'll call it pantheon, really, and they warred against each other, and they threatened um, each other, and they had their own wars, and they threatened to destroy the cosmos, which is all the dimension, right? Well, they eventually the lesser gods appeared, and the lesser gods are the gods that are worshipped currently in Harn. So the 10 gods that are worshipped, that you find churches for and temples and things like that, they are not the first gods. They're the lesser gods, and which are still gods in their own right. It's just that the first gods came first, really. And then right here, finally, it became apparent that the war to threaten the existence of Celestia, the first gods, made peace. And then they had their own realm, and they provided their own government and stuff like that. And the peace resulted in Celestia taking more or less its present form. So once they stopped fighting through the creation of the cosmos, the creation of the universe, when they settled down and created peace, the world came together, and you have Celestia. Now, the Concordant is a tome, it's a book that includes a lot of laws in there, and there are laws that the gods have to obey. Uh, it's basically like a guidebook on how they're able to interact with the mortals and the world and each other to keep the peace. The lesser gods were able to reproduce, but they were not invulnerable and could slay each other. So there was a lot of lesser gods. So after many were destroyed, the survivors entered in to the concordant of the illimitable tome. The concordant created laws to govern the way in which, basically to prevent them from wiping each other out, right? So just as the lesser gods engaged in struggle for supremacy after the first gods had peace, so now do the mortals. So you'll notice that the first gods fought, came to a peace. The lesser gods formed, fought, came to a peace. And now you've got the mortal realm, which is what the players are in the middle of the fighting era. Now, allowing the mortals to have free access to knowledge, it became apparent to the gods that the mortal creatures lacked the wisdom to control the ultimate power. Right? So the gods chose one amongst them, Save Kanor, to maintain the tome, wherein would be written all knowledge. So this tome, this book is, I don't know, if you and I were to read it, our minds would explode. Only mortals with the wit to discover this knowledge by themselves could know it. If you look at this god, Savakanor, he is the god of knowledge and riddles. Okay, so then we go to the complexity of these divine laws is cited as the main reason that the ways of the gods are inexplicable to men. Okay, so just in summary, what they're trying to say there is it's unknowable why a god does a certain thing. So if you pray to you're pious, you go to church every day, you go to all the masses, you make your donations, you do good charity, you go on quests for your God, you do whatever your God asks, and then when you pray for a simple boon, you don't receive it. And then this guy over here, the next guy over, he's a lech, he kills people, he never goes to church, and a miracle happens to him, and people are confused. Why would it happen to him and not to him? Well, that's because something in the concordant something in the concordant or the tome prevented the god from helping this guy, where it allowed them to help this guy or whatever. And that's just basically a way. Now we're going to talk meta, we're going to talk game. I think that's just a way to justify the die roll to see if it'll happen or not. When you roll the dice, you might fail, another guy might crit success or whatever. Okay, so the inhabitants of Harn and most of Lithia. Okay, Harn is the island continent that I was talking about, but Lithia is the mainland. Think Spain, France, Germany. That's Lithia, right? Okay. They worship the same gods because guess what? The gods are the gods. It's not like Harn has their own specific pantheon and Lithia has a different pantheon. It's because, unlike on Earth where you might have the Nordic gods and the Greek gods and the Roman gods, no, they're all the same gods. Now, might they be called something different? Yes. Might they be drawn or painted differently or portrayed differently in their text? Yes, but it would still be the same God. Kind of like the way the Greeks and the Romans have the same God, like Ares and Mars. Same god, just portrayed differently, or Hermes and Mercury, or Venus and Aphrodite, etc. Okay. Um, okay, but those are the 10 major gods, but there's hundreds of minor deities, right? Also, most inhabitants are pantheistic, so they understand that they don't just believe in their own god. They understand there are these 10 gods, but they choose to worship one, and that would be smart, because a lot of the gods have conflicting interests, and you don't want to worship two gods because one might ask you to do this and another god might ask you to do this. And so by focusing on one of the 10, you can live your life, and but that doesn't mean a farmer doesn't pray to peony for agriculture or healing, but also might pray to Alea for wealth and pleasure, or maybe it's possible. Okay, so let's briefly go over these gods. Not that I don't want to remember, I don't want to drill down on each of these gods, but you got Agric. He's the principal deity of warriors who enjoy the dark side of war, like pillaging, cruelty, destruction. He dwells in a great flame-shrouded fortress of Balgashang with his demonic servants. Yeah. Yeah, it is. This church practices human sacrifice, often through ritual combat with a champion of one of the battle fighting orders. So basically, they would, if they were going to do a sacrifice, they don't like put you on an altar and stab you through the heart, even though they'll probably do that as well. But they would prefer to have you fight one of the, because it's a deity of warriors, so they're going to have you fight against one of their champions, and then he's going to slay you. He's going to kill you. That's kind of that. And then we go to Helea, right? She's the amoral goddess of wealth and pleasure. Okay, now, so from what I've read through Helea, you can think of her as not a prostitute, but pleasure. And I noticed that they have church sermons or mass, and they always seem to end up being an orgy at the end. She's Yeah, her true form would drive men mad with passion. She appears to mortals in a guise as an ordinary, beautiful young woman. Um, she's the goddess of people that would live their life, one day at a time. Okay, that's Helea. Now, Ilver. Ilver is the game's way of allowing a dungeon master to create any monster he wants. There's a bestiary in Harn, which I guess we could go over at some point, but there is a bestiary of Harn. But as a game master, if you're wanting to bring in a specific type of monster that you really like from one of your other game systems or from mythology or whatever, and you really want to put it in the game, this god is he's your in, right? So he can, and this is why. Ilver is the only deity who dwells permanently on Harn. Okay, there is a lake in the middle of Harn, and there is a keep just to the north of that lake. Supposedly, that's where Ilver just hangs out. That's where he resides. Um, he's also known as the Craven Lord because he seldom ventures from his home. Okay. Uh, Agric and Ilver. Wait. He is symbolized by a sundered claw, representing the severed claws of Agric that Ilver picked up to make his creatures. Now, the worship of Ilber is scattered widely throughout Harm, but most commonly amongst the Jaren of Orbal. The Jaren, think of them as Nords, and Orbal, think of that like Skyrim or the northern mountains where all the snow is always at. Okay. Okay, Ilber's followers take nothing very seriously. They are numerous doctrines, some quite contradictory, followed by dozens of minor sects. The Ilber has a monster making factory. Think of him like Frankenstein, right? He creates monsters and gives them life, and then sends them out to, just to raise hell. Okay, Lorani. Lorani is a woman warrior, right? She's a deity of chivalry, the good goddess of battle, and the reluctant warrior. Said to dwell in the land of the mighty, in the fortress of Dolthor. Sometimes she leaves her kingdom to her constable and walks among men. And those who follow her are expected to display courage, compassion, and impeccable honor. She is worshipped by many nobles and knights. Okay, so she is called the Lady. Here it is, the Lady of Paladins, and try not to think of that like D&D. A paladin in D&D is a specific type of thing, right? It is a character class that gives you magical powers that allow, and you're a fighter that casts spells and immune to disease and all this other BS, right? But historically or accurately, or Merriam-Webster, doesn't define a paladin like that. A paladin is someone that is at the peak of their profession. They're the best of the best, right? And so by being the Lady of Paladins, she's a lady of knights that are the best. Like Sir Lancelot would be considered a paladin, not because of his, not because he's a different class than King Arthur. No, they're both knights, but he just takes it more seriously, if that makes sense. He's very pious. He's very skilled at his art. He's very honorable and chivalrous. That's a paladin. Okay. Now, on rare occasions, Lorani loses her patience and appears as a terrible Lady of the Flowing Red. That's like once a month. No, I'm kidding. So there are two Loranian clerical orders on Harn, each with a sponsored fighting order. There's no philosophical differences between the orders. They exist partially to provide a degree of complexity for honor in a time of peace, and geographical reasons. There's like the Order of Hibrik and the Checkered Shield in Western Harn, and then there's the Spear of Shattered Sorrows and the Lady of Paladins to the east. So remember, Lorani is probably worshipped all over the world. This is just a couple of orders that exist on the island of Harn. Okay, Morgath. Morgath is a self-appointed master of chaos and evil. Of all the gods, he is most prone to violence and insanity. He's quick to anger, lord of retribution, and doesn't care anything for justice. Basically, he's just a master of undead. And that's governed by his chief demigod, Kliss. So remember, each of these gods have a number of demons, and we'll call them demons because, but they could be, but they're not angels, if that makes sense. But you could look at them like like a Lorani, her demons might actually look like angels. Okay. So in present day in Harn, the faith is largely confined to Retham and Tharda. And it's prominent in Galatha. And elsewhere, the clergy are covert. So basically what they're trying to say is they keep it on the down low. You don't go walking the streets and say, "Oh, I'm a worshiper of Morgath," because like just using Kaldor as an example, it's death on sight. If you are admitted to being a Morgath worshiper, you would be strung up. Okay. Morgathism is not an attractive religion. Okay. So clerics were, okay, we don't need to get into all that. Okay, the next one is Nave, right? Lord of Pit Shadow. Best known as the bringer of nightmares, Nave is a deity favored by assassins and thieves. The Lord of Secrets and doer of the impossible. His main demonic servants are Dekjus and Gutebska. One is a black, red-eyed cat and likes human eyes and genitals as a delicacy. Okay. And, of course, temples of Nave are always covert, right? So if thieves and assassins like to worship them, then it's not considered like an open religion, right? And ritual murder play a major role in the worship of Nave. They're basically assassins or thieves. And the church's most interesting ritual punishment is Hearth Akan, in which a target is given a 1-hour start and must evade the murderous pursuit of 7 of his temple brothers for 3 days. So if you can avoid them, then you survive. Okay, Peony. Peony is another popular god in Kaldor, in all of Harn. It's the most popular deity among commoners. She's the patron goddess of healing, agriculture, and the poor and lovers. So she has a large following. She requires her adherence to strict moral code of gentleness, kindness to others, but is forgiving to those who transgress. She's represented by a young girl with gentle hands, worn red from hard work. And the Church of Peony distributes most of its wealth gathered mainly through donations among the poor and is always verging on bankruptcy because they give all their money away. I can say specifically that the clerics of Peony have the best healing spells. I can say that. I guess they're not spells, they're rituals. Okay, Serain. Serain is the god of battle, lust. He favors those who love the sport of war and takes great pleasure in watching and even participating in large battles. The virtue admired is courage. They do value the Liarl, a code of honor, but treachery is not unknown. Now, the worship of Serain was brought to Harn by the Ilvinians and is mainly practiced in Orbal. Now, remember that is the Nordic area. So the Ilvinians were like, think Scandinavians that came to Harn, and they brought this god's worship with them. And then there we go. We got Sava Kanor. Sava Kanor is an intelligent snob. Will only accept worshippers of high intelligence. He has a voracious appetite for knowledge and will go to great lengths to obtain scrolls and books. Okay. Although his influence is subtle and discreet, the church wields considerable political power. Clerics and laymen of this religion are found in high offices throughout Harn, particularly in Meldorin. And 3 main orders exist. All 3 favor gray as their formal attire. Yeah, it's a god that, and it's Meldorin, and Meldorin is, I think it's the home of the Czech Bavar, I think. Okay. Siam. Now, Siam, I'm thinking elves and dwarves, but Siam is the benign god of mystery and shadow, magic and dreams, a wielder of esoteric power, and the knower of secrets. Now, at one time, Siam was foremost of the gods of Harn. I'm thinking Siam was, like when you might hear someone say, "Oh, that's the old ways," they're talking about Siam, or they talk about, "Oh, you're a person like a druid," like a, yeah, okay. At one time, Siam was foremost of the gods of Harn, said to have been lord of the Sindarin in residence on Harn before the coming of men. Siam laid down his scepter and quit Harn in favor of the blessed realm. So, yeah, like left to go to heaven or whatever. But Siam still answers the call of Harnic followers. Whoops, it went to where? Okay, several of Siam's demi-divine underlings, notably Serenial and Sweldry, are most accessible than the deity and may be worshipped directly. And Siam's priesthood is minute, known as Ithiars. Are wielders of illusion and keepers of ancient secrets. Yeah, the ancient art. Fond of symbolism and magic. They build no temples. uh, preferring to worship under the stars in sacred forest glades. Yeah, that just sounds very druidic to me. Okay, so let's talk about the nature of gods, basically how they interact with each other. Right? It says the motivations of gods vary. Um, this is the kind of universe desired by Morgad, Lord of Chaos. It's different than what is wanted by Peony, the Lady of Truth and gentle patron of healing and agriculture. Their problem is they cannot destroy each other without risking the destruction of everything. The Kethrian family of worlds in which they seem to be trapped is not great enough for all of them. Hence, the concordant limits the actions that may be taken. Conflict between the gods is more or less confined to mortal and semi-mortal planes of Kethria, Kethera and Yashain. So remember, Kethera is where your players exist, where the world is, where the campaign takes place, and Yashain is the afterlife, or the location where they. You could almost think of it like Valhalla. Seem has withdrawn to the Blessed Realm, and Sav Kanor has established neutrality. Peony is effectively a non-combatant. Lorani stands essentially alone against Morgath and Agric. Although these two evil deities have not formed an alliance and are almost as likely to act against each other. It is their works that the Lady of Paladins most tries to undo. The other gods will usually support Lorani to prevent total chaos and enforce the concordant. And Yashain is the most active battlefield. There, armies of dead fight border clashes between the kingdoms from time to time. And basically, we went over all that. Okay. Church hierarchies, it's just like any other church. You got priests and archpreaches and all that stuff. Now, there's in Harn, they call those circles. You advance as a clerical character. You could advance up the circles by increasing your skills in certain. I think it's a ritual skill, and so this is one place that I found that there are levels. Right, it's 1 through 7, but it's a clerical circle, and most players would start at rank 3, which makes you a priest. If your skill is high enough. If not, you might be a 2, you might be an acolyte, but based on your skill, that's where you'd be sitting. Then there's clerical orders. We already know a little bit about that, but basically, the church has different philosophies about ways to go about doing things, and each one of those philosophies will have an order. And usually, the clerical order will also have a fighting order that's tied to it by the hip, right? They work hand in hand. And a fighting order is usually knights bachelor, or men at arms. Commoners can be part of the fighting order, and they would go on crusades or root out witches or maybe defend a manor house, a loyal manor house against attacks from demon incursions or something like that. So the fighting orders are and to me, I would consider a fighting order of knights paladins, right? Or because they're basically knights that fight for their church, even though they might not have any magical powers. Now, canon law, right? So in like kingdoms and stuff like that, you'll have laws, and they legally recognize churches to have the right to hold their own courts and administer justice for a variety of religious crimes: blasphemy, heresy, witchcraft. Okay. Other religions. Is there a list? Okay, not here. So let me go to my next book where we talk about the next subject. Okay, so now if you go to Harnmaster Religion, now Harnmaster Religion talks about each god in detail, but it also talks about how to make a cleric. And we're not really going to be talking about character creation of clerics. I wanted to talk about the various gods and the way they interact with the universe. But I am going to talk a little bit about it. There are a number of demigods and demons. There's 10 major deities, hundreds of lesser divine entities. Okay, so a god will have a handful of lieutenants and maybe a dozen, like demonic, barons. And then we talked about the church hierarchies, and right here it's your ritual mastery level. Depending on the level of your ritual mastery level, will decide what type of circle you would be in, and then what that basically is called. And then there's clerical fighting orders. And as a character, you're going to have morality, but players get to just choose their morality. So if you look at the morality chart, let's say you were going to be a peony worshiper, your morality would fall between 3 and 18. But most peony worshippers are 8 to 18. 18 being the most good, just chivalric, honest, that's 18. Where a 3, like Agric, might have a 3 to 13. An Agric 3 means you're just evil, nasty, mean, and same with Morgoth. Morgoth's even worse, 3 to 7. I don't really see. Okay, these two, the Halea and the Ilver, are in the middle, but almost everybody go. Okay, 3 to 10. Nevea, she's low, but the rest of them are pretty high. Sarayin, 5 to 16. I guess that's mid-range. But Lorani, 8 to 18, pretty high. Peony, 8 to 18, pretty high. So it means, to me, that means that those gods are definitely good gods. Clerics don't get piety points by rolling the dice. They get a multiple of their willpower, stamina, something. I don't know what it is. We might get into that very soon. That might be in the next book because I got 3 books up. Okay, Divine Grace. This is something that I thought was kind of interesting. To have Divine Grace, which basically means you are as you're touched by the God, basically. It's you have to have as many piety points as you have a ritual mastery level. So what that's saying is, and I'm kind of interpreting this as someone that doesn't really know what they're doing, someone that's got a ritual mastery level of 15, only has to have 15 piety points. But if you are knowledgeable in the religion and you've got a ritual mastery level of 87, then you have to have 87 piety points. So the gods are more strict against people that know what they're doing than the ignorant. And so you need to have more piety points if you know what you're doing. I think that was kind of like a cool little interesting little twist on it. It doesn't just say, you have to have so many piety points, period, to become graced. No, it's based on your mastery level of the rituals of that god. And if you do have it, if you are worthy, then you can call upon divine intervention, invocations. Get a plus on those. If they heal injuries, cure disease, remove curses, you get a plus 10. And if you don't have divine grace, you will have difficulty convincing a deity to claim your spirit when you die. So if you don't have divine grace and you die, you might not go to Valhalla. And they give you a table on how to regain piety points. Like just going to use this first one as an example. Prayer says 1 uninterrupted hour of prayer or meditation in an appropriate temple or on other consecrated ground. If it's not consecrated, the percentage goes up by 10 or down by 10. So let's say you roll at the end of the hour, you roll 20%. If you do make that roll, you get 1 piety point. It's just like an easy way to get a piety point. But 20% is really not that good. So you could do a confession, but you can't confess to something you didn't do. And then there's also the Mass, the monthly high Mass. There's also a feast Mass. And then there's temple service. So you can work at the temple for a while and get like a bunch of piety. Or you can make donations. Or you can go on a quest or a pilgrimage. There's other ways. Okay, there's something called divine intervention that you call for your god to maybe do something for you. And then you've got your ritual skill, and depending on the god, your ritual skill will be based on voice, intelligence, and some other stat. And then when you enter the church, all clerics get all of these skills here, and then you get skills based on your deity. So if you are a Lorani cleric, you're still going to know how to use a sword and a shield, right? You're going to have a really good initiative, sword and shield. There, because she's a warrior goddess. But if you're peony, you're not going to have a sword and shield or nothing. You're not even going to have any weapon skills, right? Nope, you don't get any. You don't get any weapon skills. But like all characters, you will get the 5 points to buy any skill that you want. So if you wanted to, you could just pick up sword and shield, or mace and shield, or whatever you wanted to do. Okay, and so then there's invocations, and invocations are basically your spells. You get all the common invocations up to rank 2. So anything on here that's listed as rank 2, the passage and all of these, everybody gets, right? All the clerics get that. And then if you want to buy additional common, you can. So anybody can buy any of the commons. And then each god, okay, this is the page that I wanted to get to. We'll get to that here in just a minute. But each, and this too, but each god, like Agric, okay, will have his own little section, and then he will have his own spells listed here. And like there's Halea, she has her own spells, and it goes on like that. Um, okay, before we get into ethereals, I wanted to talk about tribal religion. There's a number of tribes out there that basically worship independent demigods. Uh, and every tribe's got their own, right? And so you look at these different tribes, and it talks about their chief deity right here. Um, and like the morality that would fall into that deity. Uh, they would have shamans and not priests because they're more like barbarians, right? Okay, and then let's talk about ethereals. Okay, ethereals uh, live in an area between uh, Kethera and Yashane, right? So we know that those are the Kethera is the prime material plane, and Yashane is the afterlife, right? There is a area in between that, and they call that the astral plane. Um, there are certain spirits that live there. One of them being the astrals, disembodied spirit. Uh, and then there's like somebody with a vacated body might be suspended in that area. But then there's also ghosts or shades, and then there's natural ethereals. Um, not sure exactly what a natural ethereal would be, but maybe there is a monster or a creature that lives in the astral plane, and you would basically have to create that. Or there might be something in the bestiary, but I don't remember it. And then there's the attributes for ethereals. Possession, they could possibly possess you and stuff like that, fatigue and injury, and astral skills and movement. Okay, and finally, one of the last things I want to talk about is the afterlife. Um, you eventually die, hopefully heroically and peacefully in bed. Uh, the soul, every character's got a soul, and then there's funeral rites. Your soul will go on what's called the death journey, the funeral rites, and then here it is. The death journey can be long and fraught with peril, depending upon how the character is in or out of divine grace. Uh, Now, death journey may be played out as a one-on-one adventure with the player and the departed character of the departed character. So, if you wanted to have like you might have a death journey scenario where uh, you've died. Now you're trying to get into Valhalla, or out of Valhalla. Okay, so now I just want to go real quick over making a cleric. Uh, so, like we said, you get all skills here. Everybody gets those, and then based on your deity, you would get the deity skills. There's optional rules about different churches speaking different languages, like Latin or whatever. And then there's different texts that you might see in the church documentation or whatever. Um, and again, remember you had those 5 option points, and here's a bunch of optional skills that they can improve. Uh, Ritual mastery level. And then opening piety right here, it's 5d6 normally, but instead of that, you would get your will times 5. So if you had a 10 will, then you can get 50 piety points being a cleric. And then you get your ritual invocation. So you get all the common invocations rated circle 2, um, and those are open for free. And then you learn other invocations by spending your ritual option equal to your ritual skill bonus. So if your ritual skill bonus is, 10, 11, 12 is the stats. Your average is 11. So you'd have 11 points to spend. And each rank of the spell is the cost it takes to learn it. So a rank 3 would cost 3, and a rank 4 would cost 4, etc. And then it goes into Magique. That's the Check Bavar, which we might talk about in an upcoming video. But this was basically all I wanted to talk about today, was the world, the gods, how they created, or how they were created, how they interact with the people. And then in a future video, in multiple future videos, I'll drill down into each, not each order, but in each deity, and I'll probably pull up each of their orders to kind of show you the differences between them. And all right, so thanks for coming out and watching this. I'm super excited to prepare my campaign for my Harn campaign. You can expect to see that in May or June, sometime like that. I've already got 3 players signed up, so that's pretty cool. We are I still got a lot of ideas floating around in my head, so I don't know exactly which direction I want to go. Okay, but stay tuned, like and subscribe to the channel. Be sure to hit the notification icon so whenever I upload any new videos, you'll be notified about those. But also, go check out my eBay store, my Wargaming and Miniature, so you can pick up any fantasy miniatures, sci-fi, war, like armies of skeletons, or maybe you get like some World War II figures, or ancients, or Napoleonics, or anything like that. Check it out. If you have a commission that you want me to paint, I'd be glad to paint a commission for you. Just contact me. I'll let you know what my prices are. All right, I'll catch you next time.